Now we have a landmark decision in Denver. Voters electing to make the city the first in the nation to effectively decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms.
Tonight's city of Ann Arbor joined a handful of other American cities in an unusual fashion, decriminalizing the use of psychedelic mushrooms.
76% of voters said yes to Initiative 81. That would make psychedelic plants and mushrooms a low priority for DC police.
Efforts to legalize a psychedelic experience have come a long way. But while some fret the rise in mischief and others celebrate a shifting culture, most underestimate what it took to take the topic of psychedelics into the public dialogue. Many years have passed since the United States developed the policies that led to what is known as the war on drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
After Nixon put into law the Substance Control Act of 1970, the following 20 years forced drugs further into the counterculture, enshrouding psychedelic substances in mystery, as the blossoming psychedelic research of the 1950s and 60s essentially became forgotten. Governments may have played a large role in the exploration of these substances, but what history teaches us is that opposition often creates, well, rebellion, which meant, forced with a tough decision, many psychonauts exploring the psychedelic realm chose the dangerous and enticing path of illegal usage, drawing media attention and conservative or public concern. One could argue the illegal use of psychedelics kept the psychonaut story alive. Therefore, we must ask, who gave it the life support it so badly needed?
And this is why the right wing is so alarmed, because what they see going on is the breakdown of all tradition, all order, all sanctioned norms of behavior. And they're quite right that it's happening, but they're quite wrong to conclude that it should be resisted or is somehow evil. The mushroom said to me once, it said, "This is what it's like when a species prepares to depart for the stars. You don't depart for the stars under calm and orderly conditions. It's a fire in a madhouse." And that's what we have, the fire in the madhouse at the end of time. This is what it's like when a species prepares to move on to the next dimension. The entire destiny of all life on the planet is tied up in this. We are not acting for ourselves or from ourselves. We happen to be the point species on a transformation that will affect every living organism on this planet at its conclusion.
The controversial thinker Terence McKenna, born a generation after some of the most well-documented psychonauts, such as Timothy Leary and Ram Dass.
I've had, as I say, LSD over 300 times, and by the end of those 2 nights, it was like going to 2 horror movies. I was so scared I didn't know whether I'd ever be able to take LSD again. It really reminded me of 4 guys up there on the lecture platform, all of whom had had bad sessions and bad re-entries and had this terrible view of the whole world, you know, and all they could see were the problems and the fears for society, but none of the potential, none of the positive questions about what is man to do next and what opportunity might LSD hold. They're not even interested in that. They are so committed to the fact that this society is the way it is, and that's all you can expect.
It was just a year after Nixon passed the Controlled Substance Act that McKenna tried his first psilocybin mushroom. And from this, McKenna went on to write Food of the Gods, a historical look at humankind's use of drugs and place in nature. McKenna, inspired by his research and the drugs themselves, continued to study the field and offered one of the most unique theories of how humanity came to be.
If we're looking for a missing link, it isn't a transitional skeleton. It isn't meddling by extraterrestrials, at least not of the overt 1,000-ton beryllium ship variety. It has to do with the fact that we began to allow into our diet an exotic pseudo-neurotransmitter that was part of the native flora of the grassland. And I believe this mushroom was the triggering factor that moved us from being an advanced hominid, an advanced animal, to being, in fact, a conscious, self-reflecting, caring, thinking, dreaming, striving human being. And here is my answer to this riddle: where did human consciousness come from?
Agree with McKenna on his various theories or not, he became the figurehead for the fledgling psychedelic community into the 1990s. And it was about during this time he was quoted by Wired magazine to once say, "My real function was to give people permission. Essentially, what I existed for was to say, go ahead, you'll live through it, get loaded, you don't have to be afraid." Thousands of readers and listeners must have heeded that permission, as 50 years after the war on drugs, the research of psychedelics is finally being seen as legitimate. Psychotherapies are being clinically shown to treat depression, anxiety, and even drug addiction at the root of the problem. A new psychedelic antidepressant could be around the corner, and the devastating toll the war on drugs took upon communities in the States is slowly being realized and rectified. Now, we may perceive it as crazy or illegitimate about how we got here, but hippie or cypherpunk, all bleeding-edge explorations, have one thing in common. They are happy to wade in the waters of the unknown, and perhaps make claims that we point to as silly or scientifically false. But in this sense, crazy is a synonym for bravery, as these substances are taking individuals and society to places we never thought possible. Which brings us to ponder, what will be the cultural significance of the psychonaut? Will contemplating our consciousness ever emerge from the counterculture? And if so, what could come of the scientific research that aims to uncover the very essence of being human?